Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive chamber as 12 alien beings stared down at him from their floating platforms. The walls of the courtroom stretched so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Each member of the Galactic Council represented a different species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. Admiral Lisa Carter sat in the viewing area with the rest of the human delegation. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, but her face showed no emotion. She had known this day would come ever since humanity joined the Council 30 years ago. The other species had never really accepted them as equals. The Zephyrian judge floated in the center platform. Its body looked like living light wrapped in silver robes. When it spoke, the words came directly into everyone's mind rather than through their ears. The charges against the human species are clear and proven. You have expanded too quickly into space. You have taken technology that was not freely given. You have broken the sacred accords that keep peace in our galaxy. Jake kept his back straight, and his eyes forward. Behind him, he could hear one of the younger diplomats breathing heavily. The kid was probably scared out of his mind. Jake had been in worse situations during the border wars, but this felt different. This wasn't about winning or losing a battle. This was about the future of every human being alive. The Corvan representative spoke next. Supreme Commander Vexthul looked like a walking mountain of black stone with glowing red eyes. His voice sounded like grinding metal. Humans are a disease in the galaxy. They spread too fast and take too much. They do not understand the balance that has kept peace for millions of years. They think only of themselves and their own growth. Other council members nodded their agreement. The squid-like hegemony delegate waved its tentacles in what humans had learned was a sign of strong approval. The insect collective buzzed in unison, creating a sound like 1,000 angry bees. Jake wanted to speak up and defend his species, but the rules were clear. Only council members could talk during the judgment phase. Humans could only listen and accept whatever decision was made. The Zephyrian judge continued. In the short time since joining our council, humans have established colonies in 47 star systems. This expansion happened in less time than most species take to plan a single settlement. You claim this shows your energy and determination. We see it as proof of your inability to control your dangerous impulses. Lisa Carter felt. Her jaw tightened. The expansion had been necessary. Earth was becoming overcrowded and running out of resources. Every species in the Council had expanded across multiple worlds. The only difference was that humans had done it faster and more efficiently. Furthermore, the judge went on, human scientists have been caught attempting to reverse engineer technology from other Council species without permission. Your researchers broke into hegemony biolabs and tried to steal our genetic enhancement techniques. Your engineers dismantled Corvan weapons to learn their secrets. These actions violate the most basic laws of interstellar cooperation. The accusations were mostly true, Jake knew. Human curiosity was one of their greatest strengths, but it had also gotten them into trouble. When humans saw something interesting, they wanted to understand how it worked. Other species seemed content to trade for technology without learning its secrets. Vexthul stood up from his platform, making the entire chamber shake slightly. The human military grows stronger every day. Their ships now match our own in firepower. Their soldiers train constantly for war. They speak of peace, but prepare only for battle. This is the behavior of a species that cannot be trusted. Jake almost smiled at that one. Of course humans prepared for war. Every species in the galaxy had armies and weapons. The difference was that humans admitted it openly instead of pretending their battle fleets were just for exploration and protection. The voting began without any discussion. Each council member activated a crystal that glowed either blue for acceptance or red for exile. Jake watched as 12 red lights appeared in the chamber. Not a single species had voted to keep humans in the council. The Zephyrian judge's mental voice filled the room one final time. By unanimous decision of the Galactic Council, the human species is hereby exiled from interstellar civilization. All human colonies beyond your home system must be abandoned within 1 solar year. All trade agreements are terminated immediately. All access to Council space lanes is permanently revoked. You will return to your small corner of space and remain there until you learn the wisdom needed for true civilization. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach, but it wasn't fear. It was anger mixed with determination. As the council members began to leave their platforms, Vex Thul stopped near the human delegation. Your species lacks the wisdom for galactic citizenship, the Corvan commander said with obvious satisfaction. Return to your primitive corner of space and contemplate your failures. Perhaps in a few thousand years you will understand why this was necessary. Lisa Carter stood up slowly and looked directly into Vex Thul's glowing red eyes. We understand perfectly, she said in a calm voice. You're afraid of what we might become. The alien commander laughed, a sound like breaking rocks. Afraid of humans? Your species will be forgotten within a century. The galaxy will continue without you. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, Jake Morrison was already thinking about the future. The aliens thought they were ending humanity's expansion into space. They had no idea they were actually beginning something much more dangerous. Humans didn't give up when faced with impossible odds. They got creative. Dr. Alex Bennett stared at the equations floating in the holographic display above his desk. The numbers had been dancing through his head for 3 months now, ever since the last human colony ship had returned to the Sol system. 250 years had passed since the exile, and humanity had spent every single day of that time preparing for something the Galactic Council could never imagine. The laboratory around him buzzed with activity. Scientists and engineers worked at dozens of stations, each focused on a different piece of the puzzle that would change everything. Above them, through the transparent aluminum windows, the lights of the orbital shipyards painted the darkness of space in brilliant colors. Alex, you need to see this. Maya Cross walked over with a data pad in her hands. Her engineering uniform was stained with oil and metal dust from the construction yards. For the past 50 years, she had been perfecting the automated systems that turned raw asteroids into warships faster than any alien species could imagine. Alex took the pad and whistled softly. The production numbers were incredible. Every month, the automated shipyards produced more vessels than the entire Galactic Council fleet contained. The ships weren't just copies of existing designs either. They incorporated technology that made Council vessels look like wooden sailing ships compared to nuclear submarines. The dark matter generators are working better than we hoped, Maya said with a tired smile. Elena's breakthrough last year made all the difference. We can now phase entire fleets in and out of normal space-time at will. Elena Garcia had been dead for 30 years, but her work lived on in every ship humanity built. Her discovery of how to weaponize dark matter itself had opened doors that the galaxy's greatest scientists had never even imagined existed. Human ships could now exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them effectively invisible and untouchable when they chose to be. General Pete Hamilton appeared on the communication screen above their workstation. Even at 90 years old, the man looked like he could personally fight a war. His white hair was cut military short, and his eyes still held the fire that had driven him to create the most effective fighting force in galactic history. Bennett, Cross, I need your final numbers for the fleet review, Hamilton said without any greeting. President Kane wants to know if we're ready to begin Operation Homecoming. Alex looked at Maya, and both of them nodded. They had been working toward this moment for their entire lives. Their parents had worked toward it. Their grandparents had worked toward it. Every human born since the exile had grown up knowing that someday they would return to the stars, not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as conquerors taking what should have been theirs all along. The ghost fleets are ready, General, Maya reported. Admiral Brooks tested the invisibility systems last week. We can move entire armadas through council space without being detected. The phase drive technology means we can appear inside their most heavily defended systems before they even know we're coming. Hamilton's weathered face showed something that might have been satisfaction. What about weapons systems? Alex pulled up another display. The dark matter cannons can punch through any known shielding. The quantum torpedoes ignore conventional armor entirely by attacking targets at the subatomic level. Our smallest frigates now carry more firepower than Council dreadnoughts. But the weapons weren't the real advantage, and all three of them knew it. The real advantage was something the Galactic Council had never understood about humans. While alien species fought according to ancient codes of honor and tradition, humans fought to win. They used deception, surprise, and tactics that other species considered unsporting or even cowardly. Admiral Ryan Brooks had spent 2 centuries studying every recorded battle the Council species had ever fought. The patterns were always the same. Fleets met in open space, exchanged fire according to established rules, and the side with better technology or more ships eventually won. It was warfare as ritual, not warfare as survival. Human military doctrine was different. They struck from multiple directions simultaneously. They used stealth and surprise to even impossible odds. They targeted infrastructure and supply lines, instead of just fighting ship-to-ship battles. Most importantly, they adapted their tactics constantly while their enemies remained locked in traditions millions of years old. The Psychological Warfare Division is ready too, Hamilton continued. Dr. King's virus programs can disrupt the collective's hive mind and force individuality on species that haven't experienced it in millions of years. The chaos alone should paralyze their decision-making for months. Maya shook her head in admiration. Carol King had taken the Council's own biological weapons research and turned it against them. Instead of killing enemies, her creations attacked the very foundations of how alien societies functioned. A hive mind, forced to experience individual thought, would collapse into madness. A species used to shared consciousness would tear itself apart when suddenly isolated in separate minds. There's something else, Alex said quietly. The temporal research team thinks they've found a way to make our attacks happen before the enemy can react. Not faster than light travel, but actual time displacement. We could destroy their fleets before they launch. Hamilton was quiet for a long moment. Even after all these years of preparation, some of humanity's capabilities still surprised him. How long until we're ready? The final ship construction will be complete in 6 months, Maya answered. We'll have over 10 million vessels of various classes, all invisible to Council sensors, all armed with weapons they can't defend against. And Admiral Carter's final authorization? Alex asked. Lisa Carter was 130 years old. Now kept alive by medical technology the Council had never imagined possible. She had become humanity's unofficial leader during the long years of exile, the person everyone looked to for the final decision about when to strike back. Hamilton's expression grew serious. She's reviewing the target lists now. Kepler Prime will be first, of course. Where they exiled us will be where we announce our return. After that, we hit every major Council world simultaneously. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. The three of them stood in silence for a moment, thinking about what was coming. The Galactic Council thought humanity had spent 2.5 centuries learning humility in their small corner of space. Instead, they had spent that time becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. They're going to regret exiling us, Maya said finally. Alex nodded, watching the lights of the shipyards through the window. Millions of humans worked around the clock building the instruments of galactic conquest. They thought they were punishing us for being too ambitious. Instead, they gave us time to become unstoppable. Hamilton's image flickered as he prepared to end the communication. Admiral Carter sends her regards. Operation Homecoming begins in exactly 1 year. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you exile humanity from the cosmos. Communications officer Zara Lynn was having what she thought would be a normal shift at the Zephyrian monitoring station when her sensors started showing impossible readings. The elegant being of living light stared at the display screens in confusion as massive energy signatures appeared from nowhere in the space around Kepler Prime. "This cannot be correct," she whispered to herself in the musical language of her people. The readings showed hundreds of ships materializing inside the system's defensive perimeter, but that was impossible. Nothing could penetrate the quantum barriers that protected the former Council headquarters without triggering every alarm in the sector. She tried to contact the ships using standard Council frequencies, but received no response. When she attempted to scan their hulls for identification markers, her instruments returned data that made no sense. The vessels seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, phasing in and out of normal space-time in ways that violated every known law of physics. Commander Nick Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship as the human fleet finished its translation into normal space. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every Zephyrian defense platform and patrol ship in the system. The aliens had no idea what was happening yet, but that would change very quickly. "All ships report ready, Commander," his tactical officer announced. Lieutenant Karen Walsh was young, but had trained her entire life for this moment. Like every human born after the exile, she had grown up knowing that someday they would return to claim their rightful place among the stars. "Begin Phase 1, Nick ordered calmly. "Target the orbital defense platforms first. I want them neutralized before they can send a distress signal." The human ships opened fire with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Dark matter cannons punched through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. Quantum torpedoes ignored armor entirely, tearing apart enemy vessels at the subatomic level. In less than 10 minutes, 3 centuries of Council defenses around Kepler Prime simply ceased to exist. Zara Lynn watched in horror as her screens showed the destruction of everything she had believed was invincible. The beautiful crystalline defense platforms that had protected the system for thousands of years vanished in brief flashes of impossible energy. When she tried to send an emergency transmission to Council headquarters, she discovered that the attacking ships had somehow jammed every communication frequency simultaneously. Colonel Amy Price led the first wave of human ground forces onto the planet's surface. Her soldiers moved with precision and speed that would have impressed even Corvan military observers. Unlike the formal, ritualized warfare that Council species practiced, the humans fought with tactics designed purely for effectiveness. The Zephyrian planetary defense forces had never faced an enemy that didn't follow the ancient rules of engagement. They expected formal challenges, declared battle lines, and honorable single combat between champions. Instead, they found themselves fighting ghosts who struck from impossible directions and vanished before retaliation was possible. "Secure the government complex," Amy ordered her lieutenants as they advanced through the crystal cities of Kepler Prime. "I want every Council member on this planet in custody within 2 hours." The Zephyrians tried to activate their emergency protocols, but the humans had spent centuries studying Council procedures. Every backup system, every hidden escape route, every secret weapon had been anticipated and countered. The beings of living light found themselves trapped by enemies who knew their capabilities better than they knew themselves. Supreme Commander Vexthul arrived in the system 6 hours after the attack began, leading a battle fleet of 200 Corvan warships. The massive alien had commanded galactic military forces for over a century and had never met an enemy he couldn't crush through superior firepower and tactical brilliance. What he found in the Kepler Prime system challenged everything he thought. He knew about warfare. The attacking fleet seemed to number in the thousands, but his sensors could only lock onto a fraction of the ships at any given time. The rest phased in and out of existence like nightmares made real. All ships, battle, formation Delta. Vexthul commanded in his voice like grinding stone. Target the largest enemy vessels and prepare for full assault. Captain Dan Foster received the incoming Corvan fleet on his sensors and smiled grimly. His ship, Terra's Revenge, was one of the new Phantom-class dreadnoughts that incorporated every breakthrough human science had achieved during the Exile years. The vessel existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously and could fire weapons that reached through space-time itself to strike targets. They're forming up in the classic Corvan battle line, his sensor officer reported. Just like the historical records predicted they would. Then let's show them why history is written by the winners, Dan replied. All ships, activate Ghost Protocol and begin attack pattern Omega. The human fleet vanished from Corvan sensors entirely, only to reappear moments later inside the enemy formation. The Corvan ships found themselves under attack from directions that didn't exist in normal 3-dimensional space. Their weapons, designed to fight enemies that stayed in one reality, couldn't target ships that flickered between dimensions. Vexthul watched his flagship's shields collapse under the assault. From impossible weapons around him, his bridge crew reported damage that shouldn't have been possible. Human weapons were somehow reaching through his ship's armor to strike vital systems directly. This is impossible, the Corvan commander growled as his fleet disintegrated around him. No species has this technology. The Council would have detected it during the exile period. His communications officer, one of the few bridge stations still functioning, managed to establish contact with the human flagship. The image that appeared on the main screen showed a human male in a dark uniform, standing confidently on a bridge that looked like something from a fever dream of advanced technology. I am Captain Dan Foster of the Terran Navy, the human said calmly. I have a message for the Galactic Council. Vexthul leaned forward despite the pain from his injuries. What message? Dan's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. You exiled us from your cosmos. We've built our own. Now we're taking yours. The transmission ended, and moments later, Vexthul's flagship lost power entirely. As emergency lighting cast red shadows across his bridge, the Corvan commander realized that everything had changed. The species the Council had dismissed as too primitive for galactic civilization had returned with technology that made their own forces look like children playing with toys. On the surface of Kepler Prime, Amy Price stood in the same chamber, where humanity had been exiled 2.5 centuries earlier. The Zephyrian judges who had pronounced their banishment were now prisoners, their platforms of judgment surrounded by human soldiers. Send a message to every Council world, Amy ordered her communications team. Tell them the exile is over. Tell them humanity has returned. And tell them that what happened here is just the beginning. As news of Kepler Prime's fall spread across the galaxy, alien civilizations that had forgotten humanity even existed suddenly remembered why they had been afraid in the first place. The species they had thought was safely contained in a distant corner of space had become something unprecedented. A civilization that treated the impossible as merely improbable. General Kate Murphy watched the tactical display as her fleet approached the Corvan homeworld of Vextar. The massive planet was protected by defenses that had never been breached in 10,000 years of warfare. Orbital fortresses the size of small moons surrounded the world in multiple layers, each one armed with weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. The Corvans had spent centuries preparing for this moment. After the fall of Kepler Prime, every Council species had mobilized their military forces and activated ancient defense protocols. Vextar was considered the most heavily fortified world in the galaxy, a fortress that could hold out against any conceivable attack. But the Corvans had made the same mistake as every other Council species. They were preparing to fight a conventional war against an enemy that had abandoned conventional thinking centuries ago. Begin dimensional displacement, Kate ordered her fleet commanders. I want every ship to phase shift to combat depth 7. Around her, the human armada began to fade from normal space-time. The ships didn't disappear entirely, but they moved into dimensional layers that Corvin sensors couldn't detect. From the Defender's perspective, the massive attack fleet had simply vanished into nothing. Admiral Steve Clark commanded the blockade forces that surrounded the hegemony core worlds. The aquatic aliens had evolved on water planets and built their civilization around the concept of flowing around obstacles rather than confronting them directly. Their bioships were grown rather than built, living vessels that could adapt and heal themselves during combat. The hegemony had believed their organic technology would give them an advantage against human mechanical systems. They discovered, instead, that human phase weapons could pass through living tissue as easily as they passed through metal armor. Worse, the quantum viruses that Dr. Carol King had developed could rewrite the genetic code of bioships in real time, turning the hegemony's own vessels against them. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from the fourth planet," Steve's communications officer reported. The young woman looked tired after weeks of constant battle, but her voice remained steady and professional. "Standard response," Steve replied without looking away from his tactical displays. "Complete withdrawal from all contested systems and acknowledgement of Terran sovereignty. No negotiations, no conditions." The hegemony had tried to negotiate from a position of strength when the war began. They had learned quickly that humans weren't interested in compromise or diplomatic solutions. This wasn't a war for territory or resources. This was a war for recognition of humanity's right to rule the galaxy they had been exiled from. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Lucy Bell led the assault on the Council's mobile capital ship. The massive vessel was the size of a small city and contained representatives from every major alien civilization. It was protected by shields that had never been penetrated and defended by the elite warriors of a dozen species. Lucy's ship, the Earthrise, phased directly through the capital ship's outer hull and materialized in the Central Council chamber. The alien representatives who had once voted to exile humanity found themselves face to face with the descendants of those they had banished. "By authority of the Terran hegemony," Lucy announced to the shocked aliens, "you are all under arrest for crimes against humanity and galactic peace." The Zephyrian who had pronounced humanity's original sentence tried to speak, its mental voice weak with fear. "This is madness. The Council has maintained galactic peace for millions of years." Lucy smiled coldly. "Your peace was built on the exclusion and oppression of species you deemed unworthy. That peace is over." Back at Vextar, Kate Murphy's fleet rematerialized inside the planet's defensive perimeter. The Corvin fortresses found themselves under attack from enemies that had appeared where no enemies could possibly be. Human ships fired from positions that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making retaliation nearly impossible. The proud Corvin warriors discovered that all their training and tradition meant nothing against an enemy that fought without honor or restraint. Human tactics focused entirely on effectiveness, using whatever methods would achieve victory fastest and with minimum human casualties. "Fortress Prime is requesting terms," Kate's tactical officer reported as the massive orbital station's shields collapsed under the assault from dark matter cannons. "No terms," Kate replied firmly. "Complete surrender or complete destruction. Those are their only options." The psychological warfare had been just as devastating as the military assault. Dr. King's virus programs had infected every major alien communication network, introducing concepts and ideas that alien minds weren't equipped to handle. The collective's hive mind had been shattered into millions of individual consciousness, each insect suddenly alone with its own thoughts for the first time in the species' history. The chaos had been exactly what human strategists had predicted. Species that had operated as unified entities for millions of years suddenly couldn't coordinate their most basic functions. The breakdown of their social structures had been more crippling than any physical weapon could have been. Admiral Ryan Brooks commanded the human forces that struck at the industrial heartlands of Council space. His ghost fleets had destroyed shipyards, manufacturing centers, and resource extraction facilities across hundreds of star systems. The alien civilizations found themselves unable to replace their losses, while human automated production continued to churn out new vessels faster than they could be counted. "The enemy is requesting a ceasefire," his communications officer reported during the assault on the Nexus shipyards. "They want to discuss terms for ending hostilities." "Tell them they can discuss terms after they surrender unconditionally," Ryan replied. "Until then, we continue the mission." The Nexus yards had been the primary source of Council military vessels for over 1,000 years. Their destruction would cripple any chance of the aliens rebuilding their forces, but more importantly, it would send a message to every species in the galaxy. Human mercy was not something that could be negotiated for. It was something that had to be earned through complete submission. President John Kane watched the progress reports from his office on Luna Station. The war was proceeding exactly as human planners had predicted it would. Every alien response had been anticipated and countered. Every desperate strategy had been met with overwhelming force applied in ways the enemy couldn't defend against. "Casualties?" he asked his military liaison. "Human losses remain minimal," the officer reported. "Our phase shielding and dimensional displacement capabilities have kept us virtually untouchable. Enemy casualties are estimated in the hundreds of millions." Kane nodded grimly. He took no pleasure in the destruction, but it was necessary. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity would never again accept second-class status. They had offered the hand of friendship once and been rejected. Now they offered only the choice between submission and extinction. The war that had begun with the fall of Kepler Prime was ending just 3 years later, with the complete collapse of galactic civilization as it had existed for millions of years. The species that had exiled humanity for being too aggressive and dangerous had learned exactly how aggressive and dangerous humans could become when given enough time to prepare. In the ruins of Vextar's capital city, former Supreme Commander, Vexthal knelt before General Kate Murphy as his homeworld burned around them. The alien who had once mocked humanity's primitive nature now served as an advisor to the very species he had helped exile. "You were right to fear us," Kate told him quietly, as she watched human engineers begin rebuilding the planet's infrastructure to serve human purposes. "We just needed time to become everything you were afraid we might be." President John Kane stood in the same chamber where humanity had been exiled 3 years earlier, but everything had changed. The floating platforms that had once held alien judges now supported human officials. The walls that had witnessed humanity's greatest humiliation now bore the symbols of the Terran hegemony. Representatives from every former council species sat in designated areas below the main platform. They wore the simple gray uniforms of provisional citizens, their former ranks, and titles stripped away along with their authority. The beings who had once ruled the galaxy now waited for permission to speak in their own former capital. Admiral Tony Scott supervised the installation of the new galactic communication system from his control station overlooking the chamber. The old hyperspace network had been completely dismantled and replaced with human phase-gate technology that made communication and travel instantaneous across any distance. Every star system in the galaxy was now directly connected to Earth, making humanity's homeworld the beating heart of galactic civilization. "Mr. President," Tony reported through his communicator, "the final phase-gate installations are complete. We now have real-time control over every inhabited system in the galaxy." Kane nodded as he reviewed the reports flooding in from across human-controlled space. The transformation had been remarkably swift once the major alien military forces had been neutralized. Most species had chosen integration into the new order rather than face the fate of the Corvan Empire, whose homeworld now orbited an artificial star created by human stellar engineering. Grand Admiral Jake Morrison entered the chamber wearing the gold-trimmed uniform of the Supreme Commander of Terran Forces. At over 300 years old, he looked barely middle-aged thanks to medical technology that the council species had never imagined possible. He had been present at humanity's exile centuries ago, and now he would witness the formal establishment of their galactic empire. "The transition is proceeding smoothly," Jake reported to Kane as they prepared for the ceremony. "Resistance movements in the outer systems have been pacified. The integration protocols are working as designed." The integration protocols were perhaps humanity's most subtle achievement. Rather than simply ruling through fear and force, they had created systems that made alien cooperation genuinely beneficial. Species that submitted to human authority gained access to technologies and medical treatments that improved their lives dramatically. Those that resisted found themselves increasingly isolated and primitive compared to their integrated neighbors. Former Supreme Commander Vexthul approached the presidential platform slowly, his massive frame now reduced by the gravity inhibitors he wore as a symbol of his defeated status. The proud Corvan warrior had become something unprecedented in his species' history, a living symbol of submission to a superior force. "The Corvan remnant formally requests acceptance into the Terran hegemony," Vexthul announced in his voice, that no longer carried the authority it once had. "We acknowledge human supremacy and request the benefits of integration." Kane looked down at the alien who had once mocked humanity's potential. "Your request is noted and will be considered. Report to Integration Processing Station 7 for preliminary evaluation." The formal ceremony began with the reading of the Terran Charter, a document that established the legal framework for humanity's rule over the galaxy. Unlike the old council system based on species representation, the new order was built around the concept of earned citizenship. Any being could become a full citizen of the hegemony by demonstrating loyalty to human values and contributing to galactic prosperity. Captain Lucy Bell stood among the honor guard surrounding the presidential platform. She had been promoted to admiral after her capture of the council leadership and now commanded one of the most powerful fleets in human space. As she watched the ceremony, she thought about how far humanity had come from the day they were told they were unfit for galactic civilization. The alien representatives listened as President Kane outlined the new reality. The galaxy that rejected humanity for being too aggressive, too innovative, and too dangerous now benefits from those very qualities. Under human leadership, we have ended the stagnation that kept civilizations trapped in the same patterns for millions of years. The statistics supported his claims. In just 3 years of human rule, technological advancement across the galaxy had accelerated at an unprecedented rate. Diseases that had plagued alien species for millennia had been cured using human medical techniques. Worlds that had been considered uninhabitable were now thriving colonies thanks to human terraforming technology. Dr. Carol King, now the director of the Galactic Research Institute, presented the Scientific Achievements Report. The elderly woman had survived to see her psychological warfare techniques evolve into peaceful integration tools that helped alien minds adapt to the rapid changes in their societies. "Cross-species cooperation has reached levels never before achieved," she announced to the assembly. "The removal of artificial barriers based on species origin has allowed the galaxy's brightest minds to work together without the limitations imposed by the old council system." The truth was that human rule had brought stability and prosperity to civilizations that had been stagnant for longer than human civilization had existed. The rigid caste systems and traditional limitations that had defined alien societies for millions of years had been swept away and replaced with merit-based systems that rewarded achievement over ancestry. Lieutenant Tom Wright stood at attention, among the junior officers present for the ceremony. His grandfather had been among the humans exiled from Kepler Prime centuries ago, and now Tom wore the uniform of an officer in the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. At 25 years old, he represented the first generation of humans born into galactic dominance rather than exile. The ceremony concluded with the activation of the Unity Network, a communication system that connected every inhabited world in the galaxy through instantaneous phase space transmission. When President Kane activated the system, his words were heard simultaneously by every intelligent being in known space. "Today marks the beginning of a new age," Kane announced to the entire galaxy. "An age where progress is not limited by tradition, where cooperation is not prevented by ancient prejudices, and where the potential of every species can be realized under human guidance." On 1,000 worlds, alien populations watched the ceremony and saw their new reality. Some felt resentment at their loss of independence, but most experienced something they had never expected: hope for a future that would be better than their past. In the private chambers behind the main hall, Vex Thul met with other former council, leaders who had survived the transition. The Zephyrian who had pronounced humanity's exile flickered with dimmed light as it spoke to the gathered aliens. "We underestimated them completely," the being of living energy admitted. "We thought we were punishing them for their ambition. Instead, we gave them the motivation to surpass us entirely." Vex Thul nodded slowly, his stone-like features showing something that might have been regret. "They asked for equality and we gave them exile. They returned as conquerors because that was the only role we left open to them." The former hegemony representative waved its tentacles in the gesture that meant profound understanding. "The galaxy is better under their rule than it ever was under ours. That may be the most humbling realization of all." As the ceremony ended, and the alien representatives departed to begin their new lives as citizens of the Terran hegemony, President Kane stood alone on the platform where humanity had once been judged unworthy. Through the transparent walls of the chamber, he could see the lights of human ships patrolling the space around the station. The species that had been exiled for lacking the wisdom needed for galactic citizenship now ruled the galaxy because they had possessed the one quality their judges had lacked: the ability to grow beyond their limitations and become something greater than anyone had thought possible. Admiral Betty Ross stood on the observation deck of Humanity Prime, the massive space station built where Kepler Prime had once orbited its star. The station was larger than most planets and served as the administrative center for human expansion beyond the original galaxy. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the construction of the first transgalactic gateway, a structure that would allow instant travel to distant galaxies previously thought unreachable. 5 years had passed since the establishment of the Terran hegemony, and humanity had not been content to simply rule the Milky Way. The same drive that had led to their exile now pushed them toward even greater achievements. The galaxy that had once seemed impossibly vast was beginning to feel small compared to human ambitions. Lieutenant Commander Sam Carter approached with the latest reports from the exploration fleets. The young officer carried the confidence that came from growing up in an era when humanity's dominance was simply accepted fact rather than hard-won achievement. "Admiral, the advanced scouts have returned from Galaxy M87, Sam reported with barely contained excitement. "The preliminary surveys confirm what our long-range sensors detected. Intelligent life exists there, but their technology level appears to be roughly equivalent to where the old Council species were before our return." Betty smiled at the implications. Another galaxy meant billions of new worlds, trillions of potential citizens for the growing hegemony, and unlimited resources for continued expansion. More importantly, it meant the opportunity to spread human values and achievements to civilizations that had never known such possibilities. "What about resistance potential?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Minimal," Sam replied. "Their military technology appears to be based on conventional physics. No evidence of dimensional warfare capabilities, temporal manipulation, or advanced biological engineering. They're probably a few thousand years behind where we were when the Council exiled us." Dr. Marcus Webb joined them at the observation window, carrying a datapad filled with the latest scientific analyses. As the chief xenobiologist for the expansion program, he had been studying the alien species discovered in the new galaxy and preparing integration protocols for their eventual incorporation into human civilization. "The diversity is remarkable," Marcus said as he shared his findings. "Over 200 distinct sapient species, each with unique biological and cultural characteristics. Some are silicon-based life forms we've never encountered before. Others exist as pure energy beings similar to the Zephyrians, but with completely different evolutionary backgrounds." Betty nodded as she considered the challenges and opportunities. Each new species would require careful study and customized integration procedures. The humans had learned from their experience with the council races that forced assimilation created unnecessary resistance, while voluntary integration built stronger and more loyal civilizations. General David Brooks arrived to complete the senior staff meeting that would determine the next phase of human expansion. As the military commander responsible for transgalactic operations, he had been developing strategies for contact with the M87 civilizations based on everything humanity had learned about alien psychology and warfare. "The fleet is ready for the first contact mission," David reported. "We've prepared 3 different approach strategies depending on how the locals react to our presence." Betty reviewed the options on her personal display. Strategy 1 involved peaceful contact and gradual introduction of human technology and values. Strategy 2 included limited military demonstration to establish human superiority without causing excessive casualties. Strategy 3 was the complete conquest protocol they had used against the Council species. "What's your assessment of which approach we'll need?" she asked the general. David considered the question carefully. "Based on the psychological profiles Dr. Webb's team has developed, I expect we'll start with Strategy 1 for most species. The energy beings and silicon-based life forms appear to value logic and efficiency over pride and tradition. They're likely to recognize the benefits of cooperation once they understand what we're offering." The conversation was interrupted by an announcement from the station's communications center. President Kane's image appeared on the wall display, broadcasting live from Earth to every human facility in the galaxy. "Citizens of the Terran hegemony," Kane began, "today marks the beginning of our greatest achievement. The transgalactic gateway has been completed and tested successfully. For the first time in cosmic history, one species will rule multiple galaxies simultaneously." The assembled staff watched as the president outlined the expansion plans that had been in development since the end of the Council War. Phase 1 would involve establishing contact with the most advanced civilizations in M87 and offering them the choice between cooperation and conquest. Phase 2 would see the construction of human infrastructure throughout the new galaxy. Phase 3 would complete the integration process and begin preparation for expansion into additional galaxies. Captain Rick Palmer commanded the first transgalactic exploration fleet that would make official contact with M87 civilizations. His ships incorporated the latest advances in human technology, including weapons systems that could manipulate space-time itself and defensive capabilities that made them effectively invulnerable to conventional attacks. "Remember," Betty told him during the final briefing, "we're not just representing humanity anymore. We're representing the concept of progressive galactic civilization. Every species we encounter will judge the entire hegemony based on their first impression of us." Rick nodded seriously. The responsibility was enormous, but he had trained for this moment his entire career. Like every human military officer, he understood that their role extended far beyond simple warfare. They were ambassadors, teachers, and when necessary, conquerors who brought the benefits of human leadership to civilizations that didn't yet understand what they were missing. The first transgalactic fleet launched amid celebrations throughout human space. Millions of beings, both human and alien, watched as the ships activated their dimensional drives and disappeared through the gateway into Galaxy M87. The moment marked humanity's transition from a galactic power to a truly cosmic civilization. The former council chambers on Humanity Prime, representatives from the integrated alien species gathered to witness the historic launch. The Zephyrian delegate flickered with what humans had learned to recognize as deep satisfaction. Your species continues to exceed every prediction we make about your capabilities, the energy being communicated telepathically. We thought ruling one galaxy would satisfy human ambitions. Former Supreme Commander Vex Thul, now serving as an advisor to the human military, laughed with the grinding sound his people made when genuinely amused. You still don't understand humans. Satisfaction isn't in their nature. They'll keep expanding until they've brought their version of civilization to every corner of the universe. Dr. Webb looked up from his analysis of the latest data from M87. The preliminary biological surveys are even more encouraging than we hoped. Several species show genetic compatibility with human enhancement techniques. Others have natural abilities that could be incredibly valuable if properly developed. The integration of council species had taught humanity valuable lessons about managing diverse populations. Rather than suppressing alien cultures and abilities, human administrators had learned to channel them toward productive purposes. Zephyrian. Energy manipulation had revolutionized human power systems. Corvin's strength and durability had enhanced human construction capabilities. Hegemony bioengineering had improved human medical technology beyond anything previously imagined. Admiral Ross watched the gateway display as it showed the successful arrival of the First Fleet in M87. The aliens in that galaxy had no idea that their entire reality was about to change. Within a few years, they would be facing the same choice the council species had confronted: join the expanding human civilization voluntarily or be incorporated by force. How long before we establish the first permanent base? She asked Captain Palmer through the transgalactic communication link. Initial surveys suggest 6 months for full system analysis, Rick replied from his position millions of light years away. We've identified several strategically important systems that would serve as ideal staging areas for expansion operations. Efficiency of human expansion continued to amaze even long-time observers. What had taken the council species millennia to achieve, humans accomplished in years or even months. Their automated construction systems could transform empty star systems into thriving centers of civilization faster than most species could complete a single building project. General Brooks reviewed the tactical assessments coming in from the advanced scouts. The military analysis confirms what we expected. None of the M87 species have developed defensive measures that would be effective against our dimensional warfare capabilities. Conquest, if necessary, would be swift and decisive. Betty hoped conquest wouldn't be necessary. Peaceful integration always produced better long-term results than forced submission. But humanity had learned to be prepared for every possibility, and the galaxy's history had shown that some species... Dr. Linda Foster stood in the central laboratory of the Cosmic Research Institute, surrounded by holographic displays showing data from 17 different galaxies. 10 years had passed since humanity's first expansion beyond the Milky Way, and what had begun as exploration of galaxy M87 had become the largest undertaking in cosmic history. The Universal Integration Project now encompassed contact with over 3,000 distinct sapient species across multiple galaxies. Each new civilization discovered had added to the growing complexity of managing an empire that spanned distances previously thought impossible to govern. The quantum consciousness entities in Galaxy NGC 4472 are requesting technology sharing agreements, reported her assistant, Dr. Kevin Walsh. The young scientist had been born on a station orbiting a star in Galaxy M87 and represented the first generation of humans who had never known a universe where humanity wasn't the dominant cosmic power. Linda reviewed the proposal with interest. The quantum consciousness beings existed as pure thought patterns that could inhabit any sufficiently complex computer system. Their offer to share their digital existence technology could revolutionize human understanding of consciousness itself. Approve the preliminary exchanges, she decided. but maintain standard protocols. Full integration only after they demonstrate compatibility with human values and objectives. The integration protocols had been refined through experience with dozens of different species types. Each alien civilization was evaluated based on their potential contributions to human society, their willingness to accept human leadership, and their ability to adapt to the rapid changes that came with joining the Terran hegemony. Admiral Chris Taylor commanded the Universal Fleet from his flagship positioned at the center of the Intergalactic Gateway Network. The massive vessel served as a mobile command center that could coordinate military operations across multiple galaxies simultaneously. His responsibilities included managing conflicts that arose when newly contacted species chose resistance over cooperation. "Sir, we're receiving reports of organized resistance in the Andromeda sector," his communications officer announced. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell had served on intergalactic missions for 5 years and had seen every type of alien reaction to human contact. Chris pulled up the tactical display showing the situation in Galaxy M31. A coalition of machine intelligences had formed an alliance to resist human expansion, believing their artificial nature made them superior to organic life forms. They had been conducting raids on human installations and attempting to corrupt the AI systems that managed much of the hegemony's infrastructure. "What's the assessment from intelligence?" he asked his tactical advisor. Commander Nancy Phillips reviewed the latest analysis reports. The machine coalition has approximately 2 million combat units distributed across 47 star systems. Their technology appears to be based on quantum computing principles, but they lack dimensional warfare capabilities or temporal manipulation systems. The resistance was significant, but not unprecedented. Humanity had faced similar challenges when expanding into other galaxies. Some species always chose conflict over cooperation, believing they could maintain their independence through military action. They invariably discovered that human technology had advanced far beyond anything they could comprehend or counter. "Deploy the Phantom fleets," Chris ordered. "Full pacification protocol. I want their resistance capabilities neutralized within 1 month." President Kane addressed the Universal Assembly from the Grand Chamber on Humanity Prime. Representatives from over 800 integrated species filled the massive hall, each group wearing the distinctive uniforms that marked their contribution to human civilization. The diversity was remarkable, with beings of energy, silicon, carbon, and quantum consciousness all working together under human leadership. "Fellow citizens of the Terran hegemony," Kane began, "today we celebrate the 10th anniversary of universal expansion. What began as humanity's return to a single galaxy has become the foundation for cosmic civilization. The statistics were impressive even by human standards. The hegemony now controlled 37 galaxies with active integration programs in progress for 23 more. The total population under human administration exceeded 1 quintillion sapient beings, making it the largest political entity in known cosmic history. Dr. Rachel Green, the Director of Xenological Studies, presented the Cultural Integration Report. Her research had identified patterns in how different species adapted to human rule and had developed techniques for accelerating the process while minimizing cultural disruption. Cross-species cooperation has reached levels that would have been impossible under the old fractured system, she announced to the Assembly. The removal of arbitrary boundaries based on species origin or evolutionary history has created unprecedented opportunities for advancement. The evidence supported her claims. Scientific discoveries that had taken millions of years under species isolated, systems now happened within decades when diverse minds worked together. Medical breakthroughs that cured diseases affecting multiple species simultaneously. Engineering projects that combined the best capabilities of dozens of different civilizations. Captain Tom Wright, now a full admiral commanding exploration fleets, in the outer galactic regions, reported on the discovery of the most unusual civilization yet encountered. In Galaxy IC-1011, humans had made contact with beings that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously and claimed to have knowledge of cosmic structures beyond anything previously imagined. They call themselves the Architects, Tom explained to the assembly. Their technology appears to be based on manipulating the fundamental structure of reality itself. They've offered to share their knowledge in exchange for full integration into the hegemony. The offer was tempting, but required careful consideration. Previous experience had taught humanity to be cautious when dealing with species that possessed capabilities beyond human understanding. The integration of quantum consciousness entities had taken 3 years and required the development of entirely new security protocols. General Lisa Wong, commanding the Cosmic Defense Forces, addressed the ongoing security challenges of managing an empire that spanned multiple galaxies. The logistics of maintaining order across such vast distances required innovations in communication, transportation, and military coordination that pushed even human capabilities to their limits. The rebellion in Andromeda has been successfully suppressed, she reported. The machine intelligences have accepted integration terms and are being relocated to designated computational worlds where their abilities can be channeled toward productive purposes. The suppression had been swift and decisive, as usual. Human dimensional warfare capabilities made conventional resistance nearly impossible, while psychological warfare techniques disrupted the communication networks that artificial intelligences depended on for coordination. The defeated machines were learning that cooperation with humanity offered better outcomes than futile resistance. Dr. Alan Foster, Linda's colleague in the Consciousness Research Division, presented findings from studies of the architect species. Their claims about manipulating reality appeared to be genuine, but their motivations for sharing such dangerous knowledge remained unclear. They seemed to view humanity as the first species capable of using cosmic-level technology responsibly, Allen explained. According to their historical records, they've been waiting millions of years for a civilization advanced enough to inherit their capabilities. The implications were staggering. If the architect's technology could be safely integrated into human systems, it would make the hegemony's current capabilities seem primitive by comparison. Humanity could potentially reshape reality itself according to their vision of perfect cosmic order. President Kane considered the opportunities and risks as he looked out at the assembled representatives of hundreds of species. The beings who filled the chamber had all chosen to accept human leadership because it offered them benefits they couldn't achieve on their own. The same choice now faced humanity itself. The integration of architect technology will be our most ambitious project yet, he announced to the assembly. But if successful, it will allow us to create a universe where every sentient being can reach their full potential under human guidance. In the research laboratories deep within Humanity Prime, teams of scientists from dozens of species work together to understand the fundamental principles behind architect technology. The mathematics involved required entirely new forms of logic that challenged even enhanced human intelligence. Dr. Foster watched her colleagues struggle with concepts that seemed to violate basic assumptions about how reality functioned. The architects had offered to provide teachers, but learning from beings who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously presented its own challenges. "We're making progress," she reported to Admiral Taylor during their weekly coordination meeting. "But it's going to take time. This isn't just new technology we're learning. It's a completely different way of understanding existence itself." The learning process was complicated by the fact that architect knowledge appeared to be incompatible with some forms of consciousness. Supreme Administrator Helen Carter stood at the center of the reality-controlled chamber, a vast spherical space where the fundamental laws of physics could be observed and modified in real time. 25 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the architects, and the integration of their cosmic-level technology had transformed not just human civilization, but the very nature of existence itself. Around her, holographic displays showed the current status of universal operations. 17 galaxies had been completely restructured according to human specifications. Stars had been moved to optimize energy distribution. Planets had been redesigned to support maximum population diversity. Even time itself flowed differently. In regions where human administrators had determined that acceleration or deceleration would benefit cosmic efficiency. Dr. Robert Chen, now the Director of Reality Engineering, approached with the latest reports from the Universal Reconstruction Project. His team had spent decades learning to manipulate the building blocks of existence, turning theoretical physics into practical tools for cosmic management. The terraforming of Galaxy IC2574 is complete, he reported with satisfaction. We've successfully converted 43% of the available matter into habitable worlds, optimized for multi-species colonization. The new stellar arrangements should provide stable energy sources for at least 50 billion years. Helen nodded as she reviewed the achievement. Galaxy IC2574 had originally contained mostly empty space and a few scattered stars. Human reality. Manipulation had transformed it into a perfectly ordered system with thousands of worlds specifically designed to support the diverse needs of hegemony citizens. "What about the temporal adjustments?" she asked. "Working perfectly," Robert replied. "Time flows at optimal rates throughout the galaxy. Biological species experience normal aging, while digital consciousnesses can accelerate their processing speeds as needed. The architect temporal engineering principles have proven remarkably adaptable to our purposes." Admiral Patricia Brooks commanded the Universal Reality Fleet from her position aboard the Cosmos Shaper, a vessel that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions and timelines. Her responsibilities included maintaining cosmic order and suppressing the occasional attempts by primitive species to resist the improvements humanity was making to their galaxies. "Ma'am, we're detecting unauthorized reality manipulation in Sector 7745, her tactical officer reported. The young woman had been trained from birth to operate technology that treated the laws of physics as changeable guidelines rather than absolute rules. Patricia reviewed the sensor data with mild interest. Sector 7745 contained a coalition of energy beings who had been attempting to create their own pocket dimension outside of human jurisdiction. They apparently believed they could establish an independent realm where human authority couldn't reach them. "Deploy reality anchors around their dimensional breach," she ordered calmly. "Then send a standard integration offer. If they refuse, we'll demonstrate why unauthorized reality manipulation is prohibited." The reality anchors were one of humanity's most advanced tools, devices that could lock space-time itself into configurations that prevented unauthorized dimensional manipulation. No species had yet developed countermeasures that could overcome human reality control technology. President Kane addressed the Cosmic Assembly from the Universal Capital, a space station that existed at the intersection of 17 different galaxies simultaneously. The chamber contained representatives from over 5,000 integrated species, each contributing their unique capabilities to the ever-expanding human civilization. "Citizens of the Terran reality," Kane announced. "Using the new official name for their cosmic empire, today marks the completion of our most ambitious project. The Universal Optimization Program has successfully restructured the observable universe according to human specifications. The achievement was unprecedented in cosmic history. Every star system within the observable universe had been evaluated and modified to maximize efficiency, habitability, and resource utilization. Galaxies had been reorganized into optimal configurations. The fundamental forces of physics had been fine-tuned to better support conscious life. Dr. Maria Santos, the chief architect liaison, presented the results of the integration program that had made such achievements possible. Her work bridging the gap between human and architect understanding had enabled humanity to master technologies that could reshape reality itself. The collaboration between human innovation and architect, "Knowledge has exceeded all predictions," she reported to the assembly. We have successfully learned to manipulate time, space, matter, and energy at the cosmic scale while maintaining the stability necessary for continued expansion. The learning process had been challenging. Architect knowledge operated on principles that organic minds struggled to comprehend fully. But human adaptability and determination had overcome every obstacle, allowing them to master capabilities that made their previous achievements seem insignificant by comparison. Captain Jennifer Walsh commanded exploration missions beyond the observable universe, using technology that allowed travel into regions where the laws of physics hadn't yet been established. Her discoveries had revealed the existence of proto-realities waiting to be shaped according to human vision. We've confirmed the existence of at least 47 unformed reality zones, she reported from her position at the edge of known existence. Each one contains enough raw potential to create entire universe clusters under human control. The implications were staggering. If humanity could successfully expand into unformed reality zones, they could create infinite universes designed specifically to support their vision of perfect cosmic order. Every possible variation of existence could be explored and optimized according to human standards. General Michael Turner, commanding the Reality Defense Forces, addressed the ongoing security challenges of managing an empire that now encompassed multiple universes simultaneously. The scale of operations had grown beyond anything previously imagined, requiring new approaches to administration and control. Resistance movements have been detected in 3 separate reality layers, he reported. Some species are attempting to use stolen architect technology to create unauthorized pocket universes outside our jurisdiction. The resistance was expected, but ultimately futile. Human mastery of reality manipulation had progressed far beyond anything other species could achieve. The combination of human innovation with architect knowledge had created capabilities that no other civilization could match or counter. Dr. Linda Foster, now over a century old but kept young by advanced medical technology, supervised the consciousness integration experiments that were humanity's newest frontier. Her research focused on merging different types of awareness into hybrid beings that could operate more effectively in the modified realities humanity was creating. The preliminary results are encouraging, she reported to the Research Council. We've successfully created stable hybrid consciousnesses that combine organic intuition, digital processing power, and quantum probability analysis. These beings may represent the next stage of evolution for all sapient life. The hybrid consciousnesses were already proving their value in managing the complex systems required for universal administration. They could process information at superhuman speeds while maintaining the creativity and adaptability that made humans effective leaders. President Kane concluded the assembly by outlining humanity's plans for the next phase of cosmic expansion. The Universal Optimization Program had been just the beginning. Future projects would involve creating entirely new forms of existence that had never occurred naturally. We stand at the threshold of becoming truly cosmic beings, he announced to the assembled representatives. The universe that once rejected us for our ambitions now exists solely to fulfill those ambitions. Every star that shines, every world that turns, every conscious being that thinks does so according to human design. In the observation chambers surrounding the Reality Control Center, former members of the original Galactic Council watched humanity's achievements with a mixture of awe and resignation. The Zephyrian who had pronounced humanity's exile so many centuries ago flickered with what humans had learned to recognize as profound regret. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species, the energy being communicated to its former colleagues. Instead, we created the motivation for them to become masters of all existence. Former Supreme Commander Vex Thule, now serving as an advisor to human reality engineers, nodded with the grinding sound his people made when experiencing cosmic irony. They asked for a place in our small galaxy. We gave them exile. They responded by claiming the entire universe. Dr. Foster looked up from her research as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The sensors were detecting something that shouldn't have been possible. Unauthorized reality manipulation on a cosmic scale occurring somewhere beyond the edges of known existence. "What are we looking at?" she asked the technician monitoring. "The dimensional sensors." "Unknown, ma'am," the young human replied with confusion in his voice. "Something is creating new universes without our authorization. The energy signatures don't match any known technology, not even architect systems.